All right, let's get started. Welcome. This is Power Your App with Live Services. My name is Dario Basanjo, and I work in Windows Live. I've been at Microsoft for about 10 years. For that entire time, I've worked on technologies and platforms for developers. For the past 8 years, I've worked on platforms for online services. First, at MSN, building platforms for MSN Spaces. And then, as part of Windows Live, building platforms for Messenger, Hotmail, and SkyDrive. So I've had some experience and some time thinking like a developer, being a person whose customers are primarily developers. In addition, I've been a hobbyist developer myself. In 2003, I started working on an RSS reader called RSS Bandit. It was a client-side .NET application, WinForms, that aggregated RSS feeds. I worked on that for a while, and it became moderately popular. It's been downloaded about 1 million times since it was released. During the time I worked on the application, there were a number of things I found very frustrating about development on Windows. There were problems I faced around how to distribute my application, how to update my application. I remember changing install technology twice and ended up using Wix. There were challenges around how to satisfy scenarios that my customers had around roaming. Lots of people would tell me, I read my RSS feeds at work, and then I go home, and then they're not in sync. And I'm super excited to be at Build this week because a number of those problems I just talked about that I faced as a developer working on RSS Bandit are solved in the next version of Windows. I am extremely excited to be here talking to you right now because problems I faced working on RSS Bandit are solved by some of the technologies I'm going to be talking about today, and I just want to share them with you, and it feels really great to be able to do that. And so with that, I'll get started on my presentation. Again, this is Power Your App with Live Services, and I'm Dario Basanjo. Click. All right. So here's what we're going to go over. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are 2 scenarios that affect applications universally. It doesn't matter whether these are desktop applications, Metro-style applications, mobile applications running on Windows Phone, or iOS, or on Android, or web applications. They face these problems. The first of these problems is how to make signing in and signing up to the application as seamless as possible. The second is, in a world where users have their data stored in disparate places, on their PC, on their mobile device, and in the cloud, what's the best way, or how easy is it to get that content into your application? Simple tasks such as getting the user to pick a profile picture get interesting when you think about all of the places the user has pictures of themselves, their phone, on some online service, or on their PC. Then I'll talk about how the combination of Live plus Windows makes these experiences seamless. Seamless for consumers, and seamless for developers who leverage Live plus Windows. After showing that, we'll talk about how you can use the Live SDK to enable these scenarios in the Metro-style applications that you're going to be building. Oh, I forgot to mention as a point of order, I have a lot of content to go over, so if folks can just hold the questions to the end, I'll greatly appreciate that. So easy sign-in. So this is something we called at work the easy sign-in paradox. How many of you have gone to some website or launched some application or are about to start using it and then saw that it required you to sign in or register and decided not to use the application? Show of hands. Well, you're not alone. Lots of users dislike signing in or signing up for applications. This actually has led to the rise of services like Bug Me Not that makes it easy for you to read the New York Times without giving them your username and password. And when you think about it, that doesn't seem like a lot. You just need to tell them your email address and pick a password. But many users choose not to do that. When users are faced with having to sign in and sign up, they consider it a hurdle and they walk away from the application. They become frustrated, they become upset. Some of them end up ranting and reviewing your application or your website poorly. But there's an interesting flip side. We know that once a user is signed in or signed up to an application, the experience gets better. There are simple things like personalization. You can greet the user by name. You can say, the application say, hey, Larry, how's it going? The application can remember what you did last time. It can pick up where you left off. The application can remember your usage pattern and create recommendations for you. And all of these things increase engagement and increase loyalty. And these aren't just guesses. I was reading a research paper by Edge Research that talked about where they'd surveyed a number of websites that had added social sign-in options from services like Facebook, Twitter, Live, Google, and Yahoo to their sites. And 77% of them, a vast majority, reported increased engagement by their users. And therein lies the paradox. If you ask your users to sign up or sign in, many of them will dislike you, many of them will consider it a hurdle, and it may actually harm adoption of your product. On the flip side, when you do that, it increases engagement and it increases loyalty. So now I'm going to talk about how we have solved the easy sign-in paradox for our applications, the Microsoft's Metro-style applications, on our websites, on Windows 8, leveraging the fact that users will be signing into Windows with their Windows Live ID. And now I'll come over here and begin a demo. Just need to get my PC started. All right. So some of you may have seen during the keynote, Chris Jones of Windows Live talking about Microsoft's, the Metro-style applications, the reimagined Windows Live Metro-style applications, people, a socially connected address book, mail, messaging, calendar, and photos. And I'll be showing some of them right now. So here, this is my Windows login screen, and I'm about to sign in with a Live ID. You will note that it's a Gmail account, and that's because Windows Live ID supports you bringing any email address that can be verified. So it doesn't have to be a Hotmail account or an @live.com account. It can be a Gmail account, a Yahoo account, any email address that's verifiable. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. So now I'm logged in. So as I'm logged in, you will note that now my display picture, the same display picture that shows up online on the web when I go to live.com or Hotmail, the same display picture that shows up when I log in Messenger, is a display picture that's now part of my operating system experience, as is my name. This means that my identity, my cloud-based identity, is now data and functionality that's part and parcel of the operating system. Now I'm going to go ahead and launch the People application. And I haven't launched this application on this device yet. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And you'll note, after it launches, okay, taking some time to launch. Okay, so it's Starting up. Oh. Can't I go back? And all right. You will note that as it launched, I wasn't asked to sign in. Here, the application is launched. My information is in the application. It's pulled down my name, pulled down my contacts. It's pulled down my profile information, my pictures, my status updates. All of this information has been pulled down, and I launched the application not once having to sign in. And why is that? That's because when the application was starting up, it asked the operating system for my identity, and the operating system was like, hey, this is there. And once that happened, the application was ready to go. I was authenticated by the operating system, and it could start going to live service to get my profile information, my photos, my contacts, what have you. My identity is just a function of the operating system, and all applications, not just Microsoft's applications, but your applications as well, your apps, can take advantage of the fact that my identity is a cornerstone of the operating system and just a piece of the operating system that I can ask for the same way I can ask for a file handle or networking functionality. But this isn't limited to Metro-style apps. Websites get this as well. So I'm going to launch Internet Explorer. And I'll go to hotmail.com. Again, you'll notice that I didn't have to sign in. I just hit hotmail.com, and instantly, my personal information is right there. My name, my contact's upcoming birthdays, my mail, what have you. And this is the case for any website that supports Windows Live ID. Not just Microsoft websites, but websites that you build as well. You can take advantage of the fact that when a user logs into their PC and logs in with a Live ID, that Live ID is now a function of the operating system, and your Metro-style apps and websites can rely on that identity. So as a user, as long as I visit sites that support Windows Live ID, I never see a login box because I've already typed that username once, I already typed my password once, and I'm good to go. So let's go back to the presentation. Now, when a user signs into their PC with a Windows Live ID, they get two core benefits. The first is roaming settings, which I'll talk about next. And the second is single sign-on, the experience I just showed. With roaming settings, core operating system settings and application settings are tied to that Live ID, synced up to the live cloud, and then replicated to all PCs that the user signs into with that Live ID. What this means is that my operating system settings, such as my theme, my background, my passwords, my IE favorites, are tied to my Live ID, stored securely in the cloud, and anytime I log into another PC with that same Live ID, it could be that laptop, it could be one of the slates that you guys got, I'll instantly have that same experience consistently everywhere I sign in, thanks to being powered by the live cloud. This same functionality is available to applications. Applications can decide to use system functionality when storing their passwords in the credential vault, or storing their files or settings in the application data folder. And when they do, this functionality just comes for free. So what can your applications do when you have this functionality? Well, the first thing you can do is build a consistent user experience across devices. As I just talked about with the operating system, with roaming favorites and roaming the background, Windows 8 users will become used to the idea of whenever they sign in, regardless of device, they get a consistent user experience. And it will start with their operating system, and they'll expect that from applications. I remember back in the day, I was a big fan of Winamp. I don't know how many of you use Winamp. Kicks the llama's ass. So I was a big fan of Winamp, and I think they had a site with literally hundreds of thousands of skins and themes. So I remember being a college intern, spending 30, 45 minutes picking out the right themes, the right spaceship theme, the right buttons, and going, my Winamp is now pimped out. And then getting home. And now trying to figure out, where did I find that theme? What was it called? I guess I can go back to work and copy it and email it to myself. A somewhat frustrating experience to what it started out being delightful. In Windows 8, that problem is solved. Naturally, as just part of the operating system with a few lines of code. In Windows 8, a Metro-style Winamp application could store those settings in the roaming folder. When I log into another PC, when that application launches, it could look in its roaming folder and go, oh, I already have a style and theme and I'll just use that. A consistent user experience regardless of device. Another thing applications can do with this functionality is keep a user in context of what they're doing regardless of device. Josh Topolsky, formerly of Engadget, has this really great article he wrote sometime last year about continuous client experiences. He talked about wanting to be able to go to work, start using some software, maybe doodling a sketch, maybe reading a book on an e-reader, go home, pick up his PC, and continue where he left off. Thanks to the functionality of roaming settings, he can actually get that experience with Windows 8. Your applications can store whatever level of state you need to store. If it's a doodle application, you can store the coordinates that describe the user's drawing. If it's an e-reader, you can mark what page they are on. If it's an email application, you can store their passwords, their usernames and passwords, so when they launch your mail application on another device, they don't have to reset up and re-go through typing their email addresses and their passwords and the SMTP server and the POP server that they have to use. All that configuration happens for free. And the best part of all of this is that you don't need to talk to a web service to do this, or even understand our identity system or any of that. This is just functionality you get for free because the user is using an end-user feature called signing in their PC with a Windows Live ID. So there was a good talk about this by John Sheehan, session 475, called Creating App Experiences That Span Devices. I would strongly recommend that folks, after this talk, go online and check it out. It had lots of good content and went into more detail about this functionality. And so now let's go back to single sign-on. So single sign-on is what I showed previously. That's when a user signs into their PC. Once that identity is known to the operating system, that's all it takes. They're signed into all of the Metro-style applications that support Windows Live identities, both those from Microsoft, like People, Mail, Calendar, the Windows Store, as well as websites. Your applications will be built using the same technologies that Microsoft uses to build their applications. Our applications will be built on WinRT using HTML and JavaScript, just like many of your applications will be. The same functionality applies to the web. Once I sign in with my Windows Live ID, I'm signed into any websites that support Microsoft identities. This includes your websites as well as ours. So now let's talk about some of the benefits that you get if you leverage the fact that a user will be signing into their PC with a Windows Live ID. The first thing you'll get is zero-click sign-in. I should repeat that. Zero-click sign-in. 0 clicks. Not 1 click, not half a click, 0 clicks. As I showed in my demo, once I was signed into my PC, I launched an application, I didn't have to sign in, I didn't have to click anything. I went to websites, and I didn't have to sign in. Now, I should caveat that and say, of course, well, I guess it may not have been obvious, but most definitely, users have to opt into this functionality. So a user is going to have to say, yes, I want to allow this application to have this seamless sign-in experience. But they only have to do it once. Once the user has done that connection once, that connection lasts across all platforms and all form factors of your application. Once the user has said, yes, I'm fine with having this application seamlessly sign me in and leverage my Windows Live identity, then regardless of how many times I use that application, whether it's on 1 PC, 2 PCs, 5 PCs, 10 PCs, I never have to sign into that application. And the same goes for the web. The second benefit you get is you don't have to build an identity system with all of its inherent challenges. Going back to my days working on RSS Bandit, I talked about a key piece of functionality people asked me for was the ability to roam the feeds that they've added across computers. So I added that feature multiple times. I added that feature if you have an FTP server, you can upload it to your FTP server. If you have a WebDAV server, I'd support that. You could move. I also supported if you had a USB stick, I'd save it to the USB stick and you can plug the USB stick back and forth. For a while, I explored just building a web service and having people sign in the web service. I store your state, I track it in the cloud. As I started working on that, I started thinking about just the challenges of building an identity system. So now I build a user account system. Users choose their passwords. Well, do I have to validate that the passwords are strong or not? How secure do I make my websites? Because everyone knows most people just use the same 2 or 3 passwords all over the place. So my site being hacked means all of those users, that same email address and password, probably work on dozens of sites. And I don't want my site to be the weakest link. So then I started reading up on how I keep their passwords secure. Then I started learning about having to hash their passwords and salt their passwords. And I'm like, do I have to pepper their passwords too? It was just so much. And then I started doing more investigation. I found out that that's actually not even the #1 problem that sites that have account systems have to deal with. The #1 problem that sites with identity systems have to deal with is people forgetting their passwords. So now that's a whole new set of problems. You have to build a I forgot my password flow. You have to deal with people giving people security questions. You have to deal with if they forgot their security questions, do they call me? And I haven't actually gotten yet to building the feature. This is just around, I'm identifying the users, they're logging in, and these are all of the hurdles I have to go over. Today, if I was building a Metro-style app, I wouldn't have to worry about any of that because identity, a cloud-based identity, is just a feature of the operating system. I get it for free. Now, for apps and websites with existing identity systems, because a lot of those exist today, lots of folks have actually done a lot of the hard work I just talked about, and they have existing identity systems that they're happy with and they're fine with. And that's awesome. Even then, the fact that there's a cloud-based identity system that's known to the operating system still has benefits for you. For example, you still have to worry about signing up the user the first time around. The user launches your application. You have to give you a name, an email address, excuse me, a name, an email address, maybe a date of birth. All of those things are already known to the Windows Live Identity System, which is available to the operating system. So instead of having the user fill out a bunch of forms, you can simply have a permissioning flow built into your application instead, where you ask the user, is it okay for me to use this information? And the user says yes. Okay, that's for MetroStyle apps, but how about websites? Well, let's go back to the experience that I showed. I went to hotmail.com, and it instantly recognized me. Now think about your websites, and thinking about the fact that anytime I show up on your website and I'm logged into my PC, your website recognizes me. Always. Because I'm always logged into my PC, that's how I actually start using my PC. That means for any Windows 8 user that you serve, you can give them a personalized experience. You always remember who they are. You always know their name. You always remember their preferences. You always give them an above-average experience. They'll be more engaged and they'll be more loyal to your website. And we've built all of this, so you don't have to. And with that, I'm going to show another demo of exactly these experiences using applications that people on my team built over the course of a couple of days, showing that the same experiences that Microsoft's websites and applications have, your MetroStyle applications and your websites get as well. Right. So first I'm going to launch this MetroStyle application. And you can see the application is asking me to sign in. And it's asking me that because I have not connected my Windows Live ID to this application. So even though I'm signed into the operating system, my identity isn't just instantly available to applications. They have to ask my permission before they can leverage that identity. But they only have to ask for it once, and then they have that seamless experience. So let's close this app. And now, let's say I go to the application's website. Now, this website, I could be on this. I don't have to be on Windows 8 to be visiting this website, but it's illustrative for this example. I could be visiting this website in Chrome, on Ubuntu Linux. It doesn't matter. So now I'm on this application's website, and I hit sign in. So one of the things you notice is, again, I didn't have to sign in. Instead, I just have to go straight to permission dialog, and I'm already identified. So here, I'm now being told what the application wants to access. It wants to access my profile information. It wants to be able to sign me in automatically, so I have the single sign-on experience. And I would like to access and edit my photos and documents in SkyDrive. So these seem reasonable because I want to use this application. So I go ahead and click yes. When I do this, the application is now personalized. It knows my name, and it has my picture. Now let's go back to the MetroStyle app. So now let's relaunch that MetroStyle app. It's not strange. Right. Hold on, relaunch the application. There we go. So when I relaunched the application, I actually didn't have to do that connection in the Metro Style app. The fact that I connected with the application on the web, which didn't necessarily have to even be on this PC, was all it took. And now I have a seamless signing experience with this application. Now, whenever I launch this application, this Metro Style application, on any device, as long as I'm signed in with a Windows Live ID, I get a single sign-on, zero-click sign-in experience. I've launched the application knows who I am, it has my SkyDrive folder open, and it can start accessing my data because I've given a one-time permission to the application, and now the application experience is seamless. Never have to sign in, never have to sign up. And with that, I'll go back to the presentation. Now let's look at some code. So here's what that sign-in code looks like in JavaScript. And I'll just go over in detail what this code is doing. So the first line is just a div. It just marks where the sign-in button will be. There's the first line of the script in the script is an event handler. That is saying when the user is successfully logged in or unsuccessfully logged in, the onLogin complete function should be called. That function is written by the application developer, and it can be called whatever you want to call it. The next line specifies the scopes. Scopes are the discrete chunks of permission that an application can request. In the SkyPy demo I just showed, all of those individual lines where the application is asking for access to my SkyDrive information or my profile are scopes in this context. Here we're asking for the sign-in scope, which is what causes the single sign-in experience to occur, and the basic scope, which is basic access to users' profile information, their name, their picture, and so on. After that is the UI function. The UI function is used to actually create the sign-in button. That binds the sign-in button to an element on the page. In this case, we're binding it to the element named sign-in, which is that div at the top. It also takes in whatever scopes you're requesting, and then the sign-in button is rendered and created on the page. Once the user clicks on the sign-in button, as I did on the web, they go through the OAuth-based standards permissioning flow. They click a yes. Once that's done, the application is now, the onLogin complete function is invoked because the event is now completed. And the application is given a session object. That session object, if the user successfully logged in and there's no error, gives the application a set of access tokens. Those access tokens can now be used to talk to the live service, get access to our RESTful JSON-based APIs, where you can get the user's profile information, photos, contacts, calendar, what have you. And the thing I like best about this code sample is really this. It's exactly the same JavaScript code that you'd use on your website. It's the same JavaScript code you'd use in your Metro Style app. You could literally cut and paste this code, put it on your website, and then grab it and cut and paste it and put it in your Metro Style app, and you'd get the exact same functionality, the exact same code. So what if you're a XAML developer? We also have options for you. We have a sign-in control, which you can add to your XAML pages. Has the same concepts that we just talked about. There's a notion of scopes. You specify what scopes you want. User interacts with it. You have an event handler, and you get a session object back when the event is successfully completed. And again, the same principle applies. The exact same XAML code you'd use when building a Silverlight application in Windows Phone is the exact same XAML you'd use in the Metro Style app when integrating these sign-in options. Have I covered everything? Well, actually, I haven't. So some of you may have been wondering, As I showed that demo of going to a website, maybe not even a website on that PC, and then going back to a Metro-style application, how were those linked? How do you connect a website to a Metro-style application? How does Windows Live ID know that? So as part of provisioning your application to work against the Windows Live ID service, you'll have to go through a sign-up process where we associate your application identifier, which is a package security identifier, or package SID, with a client identifier that you can use on your website. This process will be part of the Windows Store onboarding process. So when you go to the Windows Store and provision your application, this all happens automatically. Since the Windows Store is not available, you can get this experience on manage.dev.live.com/build. And I will quickly show what that experience looks like. So this is what that page looks like. So if your application wants to have the single sign-on experience I just talked about, you go here, provision your application, you'll get a package name and a set of client identifiers, and that's how your website and your Metro-style application are linked. So once that linking occurs, what does the code look like to actually get the user to have a seamless sign-in experience? This is all it takes. That's it. Your JavaScript application calls the getLoginStatus function. The getLoginStatus function returns 3 states. It will return not known if the user is not a Windows Live ID user, meaning the user is not signed in with their Windows Live ID. We don't know if they have a Windows Live ID or not. It could return not connected, which means, oh, this is a signed-in Windows Live user, but they haven't connected your application. That's the state the application was in when I first launched that SkyPad application and I had a sign-in button on it, because I'm a Windows Live ID user, but I'm not connected to the application. And finally, it could return connected. And when it returns connected, that means, hey, this user is signed in. Oh, and they've already given your application access to their information. And here are the access tokens you need to go ahead and fetch their profile information, like their picture and their name. So here, that's it. If the application gets connected, it'll also get the session object, get the access tokens, and can immediately start accessing the user's information because the user has previously granted the application permission to access your data. And that's all it takes. All right, so let's recap for a bit. So now I've talked about how when a PC is connected to Live, by the user signing to the PC with a Windows Live ID, there's a seamless, easy signing experience. An easy signing experience for Metro-style apps that leverage Windows Live ID, whether they're written by Microsoft or whether they're written by you guys in the audience. And an easy signing experience on the web when they go to websites, whether they're Microsoft websites or websites that you guys build. Well, I also talked about another scenario about easy access to the user's data. Well, how do applications get easy access to users' data? In the same way the application connected to the Windows Live service to leverage my identity, it can also connect to the Live Cloud to get access to user-owned data, just like the Windows Metro-style apps. Just like the People application, the Photos application, the Calendar application, Mail application that you saw in the keynote and I just demoed, that same platform is available to your applications as well, using the same protocols. And it's available via our program called Live Connect and the physical manifestation of this program, which is the Live SDK. So Live Connect is our program that enables application developers, applications, websites, and devices to connect to Windows Live ID, Hotmail, SkyDrive, and Windows Live Messenger using industry standard protocols. Industry standard protocols like OAuth for authentication and authorization, JSON as the payload for our RESTful API calls, and XMPP for instant messaging interop. So what do applications get when they become part of the Live Connect program and they go through that provisioning experience I just talked about? With SkyDrive, you get the ability to create, update, read, delete documents, photos, and videos in the cloud, and read all of the user's content in the cloud. With Hotmail, you get access to their calendars in the cloud. And when I say calendars, users can have multiple calendars. For example, when you saw me log in, some of you may have noticed that a bunch of my friends' birthdays were listed. That's my birthdays calendar, which is a different calendar from the calendar where I put my appointments. So all of those calendars are available to the application. Oh, you also get access to the user's contact list. In addition, you have full access via, again, industry standard XMPP to the user's online presence and the online presence of their contacts, and can even send them IM messages. And with that, I'll go back to another demo and show what an application that actually leverages Live Connect can do and the sort of experience you can build on top of the same platform that our applications are built on. So here, we're back at the SkyPad application. And you might remember that when I went to the website, I gave it permission to access my SkyDrive folders and files, edit them and manage them and so on. So here's my SkyDrive directory. I can browse my SkyDrive from this application. Again, this was an application written by some folks on my team over the course of 2 days during one of our hackathons, so I apologize for the polish. So here are my top secret and not so secret documents. So let's see what my top secret documents are. Oh, I guess I don't have any. So let's create a new one. So I'm just going to create a new top secret document, throw in a timestamp, it's like 11:12 a.m., and hit save. So this is now saved to my SkyDrive. I can show this by launching Internet Explorer. Going to skydrive.live.com. Again, you'll notice, seamless, I didn't have to sign in because I'm already signed to my PC with my Live ID. So my documents folder says it was updated a moment ago. My top secret documents. Download, open, and there it is, the file I just created. Of course, just showing that this is a live demo. I can change this file, hit save. Refresh the browser. Open the file again. Yep, file's updated. And that's an example of the kind of application you can build on top of the Windows Live platform and on top of SkyDrive. And now the way this application was built was by leveraging the Live SDK. The Live SDK provides a set of controls and APIs for integrating the scenarios I just talked about. A single sign-on and access to users' information in SkyDrive, Hotmail, and Windows Live Messenger. Today, Like right now, right this minute, the SDK is available for Windows Phone development. So Windows Phone developer tools for targeting Windows Phone 7.0 and higher, as well as Windows Developer Preview. So what are the sorts of things you can do with the Live SDK? I just showed one, where an application can take advantage of the user's free storage in SkyDrive to build rich new experiences on top of the SkyDrive. Rich new experiences for their photos, their videos, their documents, and other types in SkyDrive. But let's not talk about an application I've built. Let's talk about an application that's familiar to all of you. How many of you have used the Build app that came with that's part of the Windows 8 install? So I was using this app earlier this week, and I was actually struck by, as I started using the application, what were the ways I would change the application if I wanted to leverage Live SDK and take advantage of the fact that I have a connected cloud identity with these services. So the first thing I thought was, well, it's a scheduling app. So I can put these events in my calendar. And why is that useful? Well, when I have a Windows Live ID, not only do I get gigabytes of free storage in SkyDrive, I also get a calendar in the cloud. This calendar that I can consume using the Windows Metro style app, Calendar. This calendar is available on the web at hotmail.com. This calendar is available on my mobile device, via whether it's Windows Phone, an Android device, or an iOS device, because they all support Exchange ActiveSync. So with the Build app, if it leveraged the Live SDK and was connected to the Live Cloud, I could straightforwardly go, hey, I want to attend a complete guide to the SkyDrive API. Click that. It would ask me, can this application access your calendar in the cloud? I would say yes. And then that event that was created by the application would become part of my calendar, part of my schedule, part of my calendar that's on my phone, that's available to me in Outlook, when Outlook's connected to Hotmail. It's available to me in the Windows Metro style calendar app. It's available to me on the web. But there's more. I also started thinking about the fact that as I've come to Build, I've met a bunch of coworkers and friends who actually didn't know we're attending. Like CJ just came up and talked to me just before the talk, saying, hey, long time no see. One of the things that would have been great, because CJ is actually one of my Hotmail contacts, would have been if the application, when it started up, said, hey, would you like to figure out which of your Hotmail contacts have also installed this application? That would have been an interesting bit of personalization. Even more fun would have been if it said, hey, now that you've done this, let me show you the sessions that your Hotmail contacts are attending. And finally, since we're also giving a platform that enables real-time, simultaneous sharing experiences using industry standard XMPP, why not, if they're online, have you, within the app, start chatting with them, create a back channel right there in the middle of the talk, hopefully not snarkily commenting about my talk, but right there in the application. Now, these are just a couple of ideas I had on Tuesday while playing with the Build app, thinking, if I was this developer and I wanted to leverage Live SDK, how would I use it? I'm sure as you guys are sitting here, you guys are beginning to have ideas about how you could also leverage Live SDK in your applications as well. And with that, I'm going to show how straightforward it is to start using Live SDK from your Visual Studio projects, whether you're doing JavaScript development or C# development. So let's go back here. All right. Launch Visual Studio. All right. So now I'm going to do a new project. say new JavaScript project. Okay. I should probably set some context. So you have to kind of use your imagination here. I've previously gone to dev.live.com, clicked the Downloads tab, clicked on the Live SDK, downloaded it, and installed it. So I'm not going to go through that process here just to save time, but I've previously done that. So assuming that you've now launched Visual Studio and you've installed the Live SDK, here's what the development experience is like. So here is my default.js file. So I go and I use add reference from the old add reference, and right there under extensions SDKs will be an item for the Live SDK because it's installed on my PC. I click add, close, and now that Live SDK is available for me to start leveraging my application. For me, I find it the easiest way to just add a reference to it in my app is to expand down here, go to wl.js, and drag it into my code file. And that adds a reference to it. So I should talk a little bit about our JavaScript object model. So our JavaScript object model in Live SDK, we have a single object, the WL object. That object is responsible for authenticating the user, authorizing your application, and making API calls. We studied JavaScript development patterns online, saw how people built APIs, JavaScript APIs for a number of online services, including the Facebook and Twitter. And this design pattern seemed common and familiar to developers. So what that means is when I type WL dot, I get full IntelliSense. I get access, I get full IntelliSense, both descriptions and functionality. Here's the get login status method I talked about, as well as IntelliSense for the function parameters as well. And as I mentioned, the WL function has all the key functions for authenticating the user, login, getting the user's login status, as well as making API calls via the API method. And that's kind of a quick overview of what it's like to leverage the Live SDK in your JavaScript projects. Now, what if you're a C# developer? Well, it's really the same experience. I'm going to do new project, C#, application. Go ahead and create that. No, I don't want to save it. And it's really the same deal. I go to add reference. Again, Live SDK is right there. I click add. I hit close. And the Live SDK is now part of my project. Unlike our JavaScript object model, our Live SDK for XAML development follows traditional .NET programming design patterns, meaning we have namespaces where we segregated controls and data objects, as well as having objects that have single focuses of functionality. Here I'm showing the expanded Live SDK over there for you guys too. Walk this way. And here there are really two key objects you have to interact with and really think about. The two key concepts here are, one, the live auth client, and that's a class that handles authenticating the user. It has the key functionality like the login and logout methods. And the second is the live connect client. That's the method that does all of the RESTful API calls and returns the JSON objects for data in SkyDrive, Hotmail, and what have you. And as I discussed, there's also the live.controls namespace, where you find a sign-in button. That's the same sign-in button I showed the code sample of earlier. And that There's a quick overview of using the Live SDK in your JavaScript projects and in your C# projects. I'll switch back. So let's briefly recap what we've talked about. So we talked about two problems that are common to applications regardless of platform: desktop, Metro style, web, mobile. Easy sign-in, which is having users signed in and sign up to your service using the fewest number of clicks. We talked about the easy sign-in paradox and how in Windows 8, we at Microsoft have solved that for applications and websites that leverage Windows Live ID by leveraging the fact that the user was signing into their PC with Windows Live ID. We talked about easy access to users' personal content, allowing the user to bring in their photos, their documents, and their contacts, their calendar, into your application in a seamless manner. And how this is done by applications leveraging the Live Cloud to access user own data, using the same platform and same technologies that Microsoft's own Metro-style applications will use. And doing this by leveraging the Live SDK and integrating into your projects. And we also walk through what exactly the programming experience is like if you're a JavaScript developer or a C# developer. And now, here are the related sessions. You can find these sessions online. Creating experiences that span devices is a session that goes into more detail about the roaming settings scenarios I talked about. Making apps social and connected with HTTP services is a talk that was held yesterday that talks about the networking stack when building Windows Metro-style apps, how to use background download, which would be interesting for you as you're building applications that talk to SkyDrive and want to download large files in the background. And finally, there's a chalk talk. Steve Gordon right there, is going to be giving a chalk talk titled The Complete Developer's Guide to SkyDrive API at 12:30 at the Marriott. I hope to see you all there. With that, further reading, if you're at dev.windows.com, two topics that are particularly relevant to this talk are working with live services and adding a live services sign-in control. In addition, if you want to download the Live SDK, just go to dev.live.com. Hopefully that's not hard to remember. Click the download tab, and it'll be right there. So thank you. If you have any feedback and questions, you can